Right on time. Hi, Painted Black, WD, One Eye Blind Art. Hi, Margot. All right. Let me get to the live chat. So, wow. Long time waiting for this. The investigative discovery documents from FBI were released, and the Nicole Brown Simpson and the Ron Goldman murders. My mother was so into this case. I wish I had her notebooks from back in the day. She literally watched this trial and took notes, and boy, would I really love to have her here for this, because she would, I talked about the internet with her. I remember, like, you could go up and you could look up anything. At the time it was Scott Peterson, or that case. But yeah, she would have loved it. I know she sees it from a different place, but yeah, I would love to have her notebooks to see everything she wrote down. But anyway, they released 475 pages about the murder investigation. So I have downloaded them, and we're going to go through some of it. So let me just pull this over here. Okay, and Ohio notes regarding interview notes, photos of Bruno Magli's shoes, December 28th of 1994, LA. Let's see here, Universal File Case Number, date received 11th of October 94, title Orenthal James Simpson, O.J. Simpson, homicide investigation, 11th of October 1994, Battaglia shoes, Aventura Mall, Biscayne Boulevard, North Miami Beach, Florida. I printed that Aventura Mall. Does not recall the shoe in question, photo display. 2, no records kept at the store which may identify a salesperson or purchase. No records are maintained at store which would in any way identify the shoe in question, its receipt or disposition. If any records can be found, they would be in custody of Worldwide Shoes. That sounds like David Letterman. Remember, he used to always have Worldwide Pants. That was his Worldwide Pants, those of you that ever watched David Letterman. Yeah. 305-887-3020. Current employees were with the store in February of 92. Okay, so Orenthal Simpson, they have photos, page unsigned, lettered envelope, typed letter, date 6/23/94, to FBI, night something, super, typed letters dated 7/2/97 to the FBI, registered mail, return receipt, copy of Bruno Magli's shoes, distribute list, 4 photos of Bruno Magli's shoes, copy of invoice, UMA Shoe Company, freight bill and packing slip, San Francisco store. Okay. DMV, photo of O.J. Simpson and DMV info. Here we are. Friday, June 17, 1994, is license. Driver's license, Orenthal James Simpson, California Department of Motor Vehicles, for DMV or law enforcement use only. Date 6/17/94, matched on DM record for law enforcement use only. Simpson, Orenthal James, San Vicente Boulevard, STE 632 Los Angeles. Resident address 360 North Rockingham Avenue, Los Angeles. Other address 11661 San Vicente Boulevard, Los Angeles. Identifying information: male, hair black, eyes brown, height 6'2", weight 212. License expired, issued 8/1991, expires 95. Class C, non-commercial. Driver's license renewal, issue date 8/1991. License status valid. Violations. Failures to appear, none. Accidents, none. DMV point count 1. Universal file case, okay. 10/14/94 and March 11th, 1991. Size 12 Bruno Magli shoes. Purchased many pairs of shoes for children, son-in-law. GIC family man. No size 12 in families. No gifts outside family. Bruno Magli to Ferragamo loafers. Photo of Bruno Magli shoes. Here we go. Best copy available. Field Office Acquiring Evidence, Miami, October 11th, 1994. Worldwide Shoes, Miami, Florida. Worldwide Shoes. One order number given does not match anything from Battaglia Shoes at Worldwide Shoes. Can't verify receipt of shoes. If received, shoes may have been forwarded to another store, though this isn't likely. 4. Reviewed all Battaglia daily sales slips from 192 through 892 without success. If Bruno Magli can provide shipping info, the shipper may have a record of who signed for the shipment at the store, and this may help to locate sales info. Okay. 27th of October 1994. M. Sterling, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Doesn't remember selling any Bruno Magli, Lorenzo, or Lion style shoes. Bruno Magli's shoe line was discontinued from stock for the last 2 to 3 years, just began to stock them again. Special order records reviewed from 190 to 893 with negative results. Will try to ID staff employed at store during past time period. Order number given doesn't correspond to M. Sterling order numbers. Possible Lorenzo style numbers 36826 and 14410. Universal file case number. Type letter dated 6/23/94 to FBI Night Supervisor. June 23rd, 1994. At 6:30 a.m. this morning, I called my favorite uncle and discussed this theory with him. He said it's very possible that he does believe that O.J. is innocent of the murders, but that not to lose any sleep over it. Innocent people are sent to jail all the time, and O.J. has the best lawyers. And then I asked him if he thought that I should run this past his second cousin, a deputy sheriff with the Dodge County. He said it wouldn't hurt. That way, X could give me a cop's viewpoint on it without thinking that I was crazy. At 7 a.m., I called the Dodge County Sheriff's Office and I told them who I was and I asked if, that's the redacted name, was there. They checked and said he wouldn't be in until 10:30 a.m. Then they asked me what I wanted, and I said I just wanted a cop's viewpoint. Then the man said, well, I'm a cop. Why don't you ask me? I said, you're probably going to think that I'm crazy, but I think that I know who killed Nicole and Goldman and why and where the murder weapon is. He said that he thought OJ was guilty, and I asked him, do you think that the LA police have covered every angle? He said, yes. And then he asked me to go ahead and tell him my theory anyway. So I did. And when I finished, I asked if he thought it was possible that the LA Police Department had overlooked the fact that Goldman was gay. He said he thought it was possible and asked me to retell the story to another cop, which I did with the same response. And they're saying OMG, right? I had changed the viewpoint of 2 county deputies, and then he said, well, we don't investigate this, which I figured anyway. Let me get in touch with an FBI agent and he'll get in touch with you. At 8:30 a.m., the FBI agent called. Seemed not too excited. Told me that my theory didn't hold water, that there was not one fact in it, that it was all speculation and highly unlikely since it brings in a whole new suspect. Then he went on further to state, how do I explain the bloody clothes found in the Simpson house and the ski mask? I said that it was reported last night that no clothes were found, that there was never a ski mask. Then he said, look, lady, he's guilty. I can't believe that this guy had the best that life has to offer and he just threw it away and he beat his wife in private. A really bright moron. What? He thought that all wife beaters beat their wives in public? He sounded all upset that OJ was so wealthy, like it was a crime to be rich. OJ worked for his money. He wasn't born into it like the Kennedys and the Rockefellers. Is it a crime to work hard? To get ahead? To succeed? He made it sound like OJ's rich, and therefore he did it. And then he tried to suggest that I didn't know the subject of wife abuse. I then told him that all 4 of my sisters are married to wife beaters. I know only too well the pain that they suffer. I know how it affects the relatives also. And then he said, whoa, all 4 are battered women? What's wrong with your family anyway? Do you all beat up your husbands? See, it's easy to blame the wife. Ha ha. Very funny, dude. I then told him that my husband and I are very happily married, have been for 7 years, that we work together side by side all day on a small hobby farm, and that we also work together side by side at a bakery. He scoffed and asked, how long? When I told him we had been doing this for 7 years, his mighty attitude changed, and he said, you are very blessed then. I said, I know. We both know it. We both know it. And then he said, lady, don't lose sleep over this. Juries hate to convict anyone. He will walk away from this in a year or 2. He has 20 to 30 lawyers working 20 hours per day on this case. The county will be lucky to have 1 on the defense side, and he will be only part-time due to the lack of funds. If you need something to worry about, it can give you examples of people in Haiti, Cuba, or Africa to worry about. Smartass. And I am more worried about the decline in the justice system than anything else. He then said, if it will make you feel better, send a copy to the homicide department in care of the county of the city of Los Angeles and send another copy to the lawyer of OJ in care of the same place. All they will do is read it and file it. Your theory, if read, will be immediately discredited by the prosecutor. All that your letter will do is strengthen the defense as if it needs it. If you feel that you must, then go ahead and send it. But your theory doesn't hold water. I hope he gets the maximum. What an upbeat guy. If he is so disheartened by the system, as he just stated in the domestic cases and trials that he lectured to me, why doesn't he just quit? I called Dodge County and talked with 2 deputies. I called the FBI in Rochester as above. I called a MPLS newspaper. They weren't interested. I called the Dodge County again, who told me they couldn't help me. I called MPLS FBI, and they said they couldn't help me. I mailed the letters to Shapiro and Marcia Clark. Express, next day air, return receipt requested. I called Los Angeles FBI. I talked to you, Mr. Knight Supervisor. Thank you, thank you. June 27, 1994, Channel 9, Special News, O.J. Simpson, The Quest for Justice. Glove was a work glove, not a ski glove as previously reported by the media. The blood tests were inconclusive. Goldman was wearing blue jeans and a sweater when killed, meaning that he went home and changed clothes before he went to Nicole's house. When Nicole's house was only 2 blocks away, why would he go home to change clothes first? This fact contradicts what Redacted said in Tuesday's paper. A girl who knew Goldman reported in an interview in part of this show that Goldman was trying to find himself. Could this mean that Goldman was questioning his gayism? If Redacted was quoted in Tuesday's paper, why hasn't any media questioned him since? Why hasn't anyone reported the fact that Goldman was gay? Who answered the phone at the Mezzaluna restaurant when Nicole called? How many people knew that Goldman was going there to deliver the glasses? Why didn't Redacted try to call Nicole when Goldman didn't appear to be at home? Could Redacted have called Goldman and realizing that he wasn't home yet, get upset, head over to Nicole's to kill her? After killing her, he hides from Goldman, who appears glasses in hand, upset at having his plans changed, then also kills Goldman. Right motive, wrong man. Did the police seek to obtain their own justice? Were they as frustrated with Nicole's not pressing charges against O.J., and thus did they decide that now is the time to persecute O.J. on Nicole's behalf? Was the investigation prejudiced against O.J.? Could the knife be at the Mezzaluna restaurant? Could the caller to Nicole's house when O.J. was on the run have been the murderer himself? The papers reported that no O.J. appeared, but did Redacted. This show also stated that the gym bag found in the field in Chicago was not recognized as one of O.J.'s by the flight attendant. Could it be that O.J.'s Bronco was last seen at Nicole's house that night because he swung by there to see her before leaving town and happened upon the murders and ran, knowing that he would be a suspect? Could it be that Redacted of O.J.'s taken the Bronco without permission and that he was driving the Bronco at the time that it was seen? Could it be possible that O.J. never heard the limo driver when he drove up because he was taking a shower? What is it that Redacted was afraid of that made him not want to testify? Why did he seek immunity prior to testifying to the grand jury? It was also stated that Goldman and Nicole were seeing more and more of each other, spending more time together. Nicole thought she was being followed by O.J. Could it be that Nicole was feeling this only when she was with Goldman? Could it have been that both O.J. and Goldman's Redacted were keeping tabs on the pair, both men getting jealous? Could it be possible, as evidenced from the 911 airings, O.J. is a yeller, meaning that he really yells? Is it possible that he would have shown up that night and not yelled loud enough to wake the neighbors? I don't think so. Also, Nicole would not have opened the door willingly if O.J. had been outside. She would have done what she did in October, as witnessed by the 911 call. She would have called for help instinctively. Therefore, the person at the door could not have been O.J. It was a person she recognized as from the Mezzaluna restaurant, thinking that it was the person who was bringing over the lost glasses. She opens the door to her death. It stated that Nicole was killed first when she answered the door. That would lead me to believe that the man on the other side was not O.J., but someone else that she knew. Perhaps Redacted, the killer. If it had been OJ at that hour of night, wouldn't she do what she had done previously and called the cops and not open the door, as scared as she sounded on the 911 tapes, and the fact that she didn't want to be alone in the house with OJ, I find it hard to believe that she would just open the door. More likely she would have called the police while he broke the door down, as heard on the 911 tape of October. The killer enters personally, the 911 tapes only verify my conviction, my theory. The killer enters the house to be sure there was no one there. Goldman had not yet arrived. He returns outside to find Goldman perched over Nicole's body and stabs him from behind. A fight ensues, which ends in Goldman's death. As a last stab at the man who has cheated on him, the killer attempts to cut off the ear of Goldman, the ear with the telltale sign of his gayism. The gayism questioned by Goldman in his quest to find himself. I don't have all the evidence, that's true, but you don't have my dreams either. This whole case wouldn't be so intriguing except for the fact that I can't sleep at night. The dreams that I have where a piece of the puzzles fall into place, and the ultimate dream that the killer is still out there and now he's after me. My odd history. There is some, but its revelation and disclosure would only hurt my family. Redacted. My mother gave birth to a boy, the first boy in the family, which until then consisted only of 5 girls. Shortly after he came home, I awoke one night and walked into the living room where my mother was sitting in a rocking chair. I did not go over to her. I only entered the room where I could be seen. She was holding the baby in her lap. She was crying and bathing him with a wet cloth. My dad at her side slowly stood as I entered the room, and he said, "Get back to bed." I uttered 3 words, "Change his name." My mother got hysterical and said, "Change his name?" She kept repeating it over and over. My dad said, "Don't be ridiculous. Changing his name won't help." She kept insisting. He left the house for a while. As I climbed into bed, I had a feeling that it was not too late. My brother had been named Redacted. Now he is named Redacted. I have never found anything, not even in his baby book, that refers to this change. Mom and Dad said nothing. Not then, not now. I have never asked them about it. I'm not sure that I want to know. Later, while working on the family tree genealogy for a college report, I discovered that my mom had a brother that was a stillborn, and that his name was Redacted. My aunt also had a son who lived for a short time after birth. His Redacted. My aunt, his name was also Redacted. Tell me, why would any woman name her only son with the same name as a baby who had died? Strange. To this day, there are no Redacteds in the family. It now seems to be a name reserved for stillborn babies. Redacted. I was burning papers outside in an agency when I noticed a movement in the woods at the clearing of our land. A person. The movement continued, and into the clearing walked my grandfather, my dad's dad. Only he was different. He had no coat on, no walking cane, and he had both eyes. My grandpa was a carpenter, and he had lost one eye while sharpening a tool. For this reason, I had always been afraid of him. Thanks to my big sister, who informed me that he was looking for a replacement eye. She always sat on his lap, and I questioned her about his not taking hers, and she said, "My eyes are blue. He doesn't want a blue eye and a green eye. He wants 2 green eyes, and yours are green." I stood gazing at him, and as he smiled, so did I. He no longer needed an eye, for now he had 2. At that instant, Dad hollered from the house for my sister and I to come in. Now. Upon entering the house, we were told to change clothes. We were going to Redacted. Grandpa Redacted had died. I tried to explain that he didn't die. He was in the woods. No one listened to me. In fact, my dad just hollered, "Get going!" My dad was so upset, I wanted to console him. It must be a joke. I walked to the window for one last look at the clearing by the woods. But there was no one there. My grandpa was gone. 1970, we moved from a small town in Iowa to a farm in Minnesota. I loved it. Sometime shortly after I became aware that 2 people died in that house. My mother checked into it with the neighbors who had lived in the area. Anyways, 2 people had indeed died there. One in a fire and one was a suicide. They weren't sure. Shortly after, my older sister insisted on having a Ouija board for Christmas. My dad bought one. I, however, stayed far away from it. All of a sudden, one day it was missing. I don't know where it went or why, nor do I care to know. Once my mother wanted to smooth out some of the hayfield, a part that we had not farmed, but that she wanted to. My brothers wanted to ride on the drag, a makeshift thing that was made of heavy grinder-like beams. She got up to the top of the field drive. Everything was fine. I was riding next to her on the tractor. She stopped to shift gears, and I told her to stop and let the boys off now. She looked at me and said, "No, this will be fun." She had only gone a little way before disaster was evident. My youngest brother, closest to the back, jumped off when the back started to flip over towards the tractor. My other brother was not so lucky. He had chosen to sit in the middle. Oh. I took a leap towards the drag and managed to grasp it in time to keep it from crushing my brother and mother between the tractor and the drag. The drag had hit my brother, causing a scratch and maybe a bruise, and he was crying, but he was alive. I was shaken. My mother glared at me. I didn't do it. I just somehow knew that it would happen. Thankfully, we never did it again. In fact, I believe that it sits there even now. 1974, my younger brother was offered to help with feeding the animals. I was thrilled. Up to this time, I was the only one in the family who preferred to be around the animals. I was delighted. He was chatting away as we walked from the barn up the hill, away from the house, to the corn crib. It had boards across the doorway to keep the corn from falling out when full. I opened the outer door and hesitated. Something was wrong. What? I looked on either side. Nope, no snakes, no animals. I started to enter, and he begged to go in. He could not climb in by himself. With an unexplainable feeling of dread and a question to myself, I made sure it was safe. I got out and lifted him over. I looked at a hole in the floor. No, too small. I turned and retrieved the pail from outside the crib. I was just turning around when I heard a chilling scream. My brother had fallen through the hole, only one leg up to his hip. He was screaming hysterically. I tried to console him. He could not get out. I could not remove either board. Fearing that he was hurt, I wanted to go for help, for tools, for anything. He protested, "Don't leave me." I hurried and tried to feel around his leg to see if there was anything he could get hurt on. I rushed out of the crib, talking to him the entire time. I crawled under it, where it was dark and dirty. I could see his leg, but as I touched him again, he started to scream. When I returned to the inside, he was pale and his eyes wild-looking. I had to get him out. He was trying on his own and could not move, nor turn nothing. I bent down next to him and had him put his arms around my neck and strained to pull him up. He yelled a bloody scream. When I looked down, blood was pouring out of his leg. Damn it, damn it. I grabbed him and cleared 10 boards and ran to the house screaming. My mother cleared the table, put washcloths on the wound. All I could say was over and over, "I knew it would happen. I knew it. I knew it." To this day, I can't look at him without knowing that it was my fault. He has a huge scar from below the knee to the hip. He says that it wasn't my fault. He has never blamed me, and I love him for it, even though I know that it was. Why didn't I listen to my senses, the premonitions which had been so right before? He never offered to help me after that, and I think I will always be grateful. I never want to repeat it. It was at this time I began to question myself. Could I be the cause? Could I somehow be a jinx to those I love? To those who love me? I withdrew within myself, preferring to spend time with my animals to jeopardizing my family. I worried from sunup to sundown. This way, I would keep my family safe. I found that if I worked hard enough, I worked from sunup to sundown. Got worried. I found that if I worked hard enough, I seemed to have less dreams. 1976, summertime. My father wanted my helping in fixing the corn picker. I begged him, "Can't we fix it tomorrow?" He said he wanted it fixed now and needed my help in holding up the rollers. It was an awkward position. I was half bent, half kneeling, not quite laying down, a position necessary to hold the rollers up. After hours, my whole body ached. I attempted to switch hands and cut a finger. I dropped the rollers and stood looking at the oozing blood. I became aware of my sisters and brothers yelling. I looked at them where they were playing, and they yelled, "Dad wants you." I looked to my dad, and my blood chilled. He was still standing next to the corn picker. He said, "Lift it, lift it." I ran back and lifted up the dropped rollers. When I had cut my finger and dropped the rollers, the gears he had been working on pinned his fingers between two gears, breaking through the fingernail. He pulled out a bloody hand, and I was sure he would pass out or deck me. I stood rooted to the spot, waiting for him to pass out. He slowly staggered to the truck and laid over the hood. We doctored him up, even though I was still afraid to get too close to him. We laughed about it later, after his finger healed, but I never told him about my dread, why I had not wanted to work on it that day. I never will. Some things you just can't explain. I had once again hurt someone I loved. 1976. I skipped school on impulse and walked 10 plus blocks to the hospital to visit my other grandpa, my mom's dad, who was in the hospital with cancer. I went directly to his room to intensive care, even though I had not been there before. When I went in, he said, "I knew you would come." And then he gripped my hand in his in an iron death grip and said, "Kill me, please. Just take a gun to my head and kill me. I can't go on." "You can do it. I know you can. No one else can, but I know that you can." I was terrified. I have never been very close to anyone, but I did not want to kill him either. I removed my hand from his, and scared to death, to quote a phrase, I backed out of the room. I stood in the hallway sobbing, not knowing which way to go, where to turn. I was lost. A worker at the hospital saw me and asked what was wrong. I was sobbing so hard I could not tell her. She then checked the log on my grandpa. My grandma signed in and out so that the hospital always knew where to get a hold of her. They paged her. She and my mother were in the cafeteria. When they arrived, I told them why I was crying, and Grandma marched right in there and told him to stop it, told him that he was scaring me. I could not go back into the room. He recovered and was sent home. From there, he went back and forth between the nursing home and his trailer until he died in 1979. I gave up on studying for finals. There was only one day left, but I knew I had to do something more important. I managed to get my twin to drive with me to the nursing home in redacted from redacted. That was where my mom's dad was staying. We arrived late. I heard Grandpa say, "It's about time." They were almost too late. He was referring to his twin sons and not to Blank and I, his twin granddaughters. And as we were walking towards him, the room was dark except for a light over his bed. He pointed towards the closet and said, "Look, it's Mary." We looked, and then we looked at each other. "Look," he said, "it's Mary, Virgin Mary. She's smiling and waving at me." 2 hours after we left him, he passed on. Grandpa never was a churchgoer. 1980 to 1993, I knew every time that my sister was abused by her husband. She never told me. She had shut herself off from the family. She had moved from redacted. I still knew what was going on because every time that I went to sleep, I would see it all in my dreams. I wanted desperately to complete college. It was becoming harder and harder to sleep. I took pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to stay awake. Nothing would stop the dreams. 1984, while with my mother and sister on a trip to redacted, my mother stopped at a four-way stop. Her view to the left was blocked by another car. Two-lane, four-way stop. She started to go and I said, "Stop." She looked at me and hesitated. The car next to us missed the oncoming car. We did not. He had failed to stop and wait his turn. He tried to sneak in behind another car and was hit by my mom because she saw the two cars and knew it was her turn. 1985. I was staying on my parents' farm and looking after it for them while they were on assignment with Redacted. I was again attending college. My brother was living there too. One night after having gone to sleep, I awoke for some reason and felt my life in danger. Afraid, I slowly opened one eye just a little bit. What I saw was my brother standing in the doorway of the bedroom with a .22 in his hand pointed in my direction. Afraid and knowing that death was imminent, I decided to close my eyes. My first urge was to sit up and yell at him. Somehow I knew that this would certainly bring my death, and I accepted that I was sure would bring my death as a strange shadow came over the bed, and I felt instantly at peace, as though everything would be fine, okay. I heard a noise from my brother, and I opened my eyes very slightly, in time to hear him say, "Oh my gosh," he had slowly lowered the gun and backed out of the room. Again, we never talked about it. I never asked him what he saw. I am not sure that I really want to know. All that I am sure of is that he never again went into that room, at least of which I'm aware. He moved out of the house and in with my sister shortly after that. Guess that you really can't blame him though, right? 1986, I told my favorite uncle all about this. We had grown very close and I had to tell someone. He believed me and even asked me to tell him more. I described in detail a house, even drew him a picture. He fell silent. He held up a finger as if he was calculating. He said that one of my aunts lived in that house in 1962 or 63. I was only 2 or 3 years old at the time. I was shocked, and so was he. I had described the house in every detail. He said I wasn't weird, just unique. He then urged me to write down all my dreams and document them and have someone else sign it. I laughed and said, "Yeah, right," like anyone in their right mind would. Now I wish that I had taken his wise advice. So long as the dreams aren't about someone I know, there's really not much that I can do. And up until June 17th, I didn't notice much care. August 1987, I started work in a bakery next to my apartment to fill in my extra time and to earn some extra money. I already had a full-time job at an insurance agency. There was a good-looking guy there. Anytime he would come up to me, I would answer his question automatically until one time he said, "I don't know how you do it, but I wish you'd at least wait until I asked the question before you answered it." And then he walked away. One question he did not ask, but I answered, "Yes, I slept with my teddy bear last night." It was not a question he had ever asked before, nor had we ever talked personally, only about work and only limited. In time, I married that gorgeous man. Throughout our marriage, I have told him when my parents were in town without having heard from them first. I told him my sister had a baby, even though we didn't even know she was expecting. I told him to answer the phone before it rang. He would say, "You know what I was thinking today?" Just as a matter of conversation. He did not mean for me to actually tell him, but that's what I would do. He told me once that if it continued, he would leave me. He said it was creepy. After a fashion, he became to accept my queerness and even laughed about it. We are kindred spirits. I can read his mind, and he sometimes mine, because we were meant for each other. He believes that it's a sign that we are meant for each other. I hope that this O.J. Simpson case would not make him leave. I dearly love the man. However, I can't go to sleep because of the dreams that I have. I can't let a man go to jail or sit there waiting when I know that he is innocent of the crime he is accused of. Even though he agrees with my reasoning, he tells me to let the courts decide his fate. It's not up to me. But isn't it everyone's job to ensure that the justice system stays on track, that it continues to convict only the guilty. If our justice system can hold O.J. in jail on circumstantial evidence, a wealthy, well-known hero, what hope do the rest of us have? I tried to coax my husband into going to visiting his father at the Redacted. I couldn't tell him why. I didn't want to do something strange. His father had suffered from Parkinson's for 20 plus years. He and his father had never been close. 2 days later, his father died. I didn't remind him of my suggestion to go see him. He never mentioned it. I hoped he had forgotten. June 1993. I was at work when I felt that something was wrong. My husband was in danger, maybe. I told my coworker next to me that I felt something was wrong. It was about 9, I think. I told her that I really missed my husband, and then I decided that I would call him and have him drive in and meet me for lunch. I dialed home. No answer. No busy signal. No ringing. Only a dead line. I dialed again. The tension mounting. I dialed and redialed. The fear now real. I started to cry. The coworker asked my number and dialed it for me. Once, twice. She re-asked the number and dialed 2 more times, trying to reassure me that my husband was a big boy and could take care of himself. Finally, she got it to ring. We never had any trouble before with the line, and we didn't have any trouble after that with the line. It was just that time. She handed me the phone, and I was relieved to hear my husband's warm, familiar voice on the other end. We chatted briefly, and I told him that I missed him and wanted him to meet me. I also told him about the phone problem, and we chatted, and laughingly he reassured me that everything was fine and that he would meet me for lunch. Not 10 minutes later, he called back. The rear window of our car had been shattered. I told him not to touch anything. I would be home immediately, and told him to call the police. The police arrived. The rear window had a built-in rear defogger. The wires were the only thing holding the window in. We had driven that car home from work early that morning, 3 a.m. The window was fine then. It was also fine when I left again for work at 8 a.m. I had to walk past that car to get into the car I drove. The police arrived and looked at it, and they said, "Have either of you touched this car today?" I told him no, hoping that he would be able to get the prints off from it. He looked at the rear window again. Bending down at eye level, he then straightened up and said, "It's been kicked out from the inside." The strangeness of it, we always locked the doors, and whomever had jimmied the door open, the cops showed us the marks on the window and trim where this had been done, had kicked the window out from the inside of the car, then had locked the door afterwards. Nothing was taken from the car. Not the tape deck, not even the new parts in the back with the price tag and the sales slip still attached. I know that my brother-in-law did this. I can't prove it. In February, my twin sister came to her senses and left her husband of 5 years with her young son. My sister, my twin, had been with this animal since 1980. I say animal because he is a batterer. I have known since 1980 and could not convince her to leave. I had agreed to sell her a car, but the engine blew up, and I found out on Friday that it would cost $800 to $900 to fix it. My husband and the mechanic say it would not be worth it because the car was so old. I called my twin and told her on Saturday. The window was kicked out on Monday morning. Her husband lives 8 hours away and with his grandmother, whom he needs to get someone to keep an eye on when he's not around. I know that he did it. I cannot prove it. September of 1993, I was working at Redacted, selling Redacted. I had just finished typing and entering the December renewals, which would be mailed out in November. I got a premonition, so I went to my supervisor and I said, "What happens if I sign and date these now in September, dating them for November? And I'm not here in November. What happens then?" She said, "Why, Redacted, are you planning on not being here?" Not wanting to go into details about my quirk, I said, "You never know. I might get fired. I might die." She replied, "Oh, redacted, you're not going to die. You're not going to be fired. We need you." On October 27th, I was fired for insubordination. I argued with the manager because she insisted that it didn't matter that we lost accounts, that we were large enough that we could afford it. I commented and tried to get her to see how wrong she was. When you rely on the public for your income, you cannot afford not to treat each account as precious. I was reprimanded for not comprehending. You just don't understand. You have a hard time understanding, a vice president said minutes before I was fired. There are things more important than the customer. And then he pounded his fist on the table to intimidate me and said, "Who do you think you are, lady? God?" The only thing that I was guilty of was trying to please the customer and keep the work flowing. I wrote a letter to the owner of the company. To date, 2 third-degree level managers were demoted. The person who took the job, which everyone insisted that I should have had, has been transferred out of that prestigious job to a team job lower level. During the 7 years I worked there, I never heard of anyone being demoted. In fact, one supervisor tried to get me into management, saying once you are a supervisor, the only place to go is up. January of 93, not sure of the month. Didn't think I'd ever need to know. I awoke sobbing. My crying had woke my husband, who asked me what was wrong. I told him something was wrong with my dad. It was around 5 a.m., too early to wake Mom. I got out of bed and waited as the morning came so I could call her without waking her up. I didn't want to wake her up if I was wrong. Even though my husband tried to assure me that he was okay, the feeling of dread wasn't erased. My fears were confirmed when I reached my mother in Texas, their winter home. My father was in the hospital for observation. They weren't sure if he had a heart attack or not. My husband voiced some concern tonight, June 28th, that he hoped that they won't lock you up. Gee, me too. I hope not too. I hope that his premonition doesn't come true. You won't do that, will you? If I am wrong on this OJ case, I promise never to listen again. I promise to ignore my dreams and my premonitions. Here goes. Monday morning I awoke early, listless. I went to bed at my usual time, 3 a.m. It was now 5 a.m. I had a dream. A blonde woman crying, overcome with emotions of confusion and puzzlement. She was just standing there crying and repeating, "Why?" Sob, sob, "Why?" She was standing there. The fear of confusion was consuming. I crept out of my bed so as not to waken my husband and went downstairs. I didn't consider the dream too important, though it had frightened me. The girl did not resemble in the least either of my 2 blonde sisters, one of which is battered, has been for 6 years. I did not recognize the woman. She wasn't anyone that I knew or met, so I went about my business and never mentioned the dream to my husband. Well, when you have a good thing, you tend to protect it from strange unexplainables. Why rock the boat? That evening, 4 p.m., as I and my husband started work at the bakery, we heard that O.J. Simpson's wife was killed. The name sounded familiar. I am not a football fan or any sport. I just like to be outside, not a spectator. Upon hearing this news, I was slightly aware of who he was. Oh, football. Well, of course he did it. I have never been overly fond of men. Kind of rebellion for never being asked to the prom, I suppose. And I have always been extremely pro-woman, having 3 sisters in abusive situations. Currently, I know only too well how charming abusive men can be in public and how damaging in private. I can see the bruises and welts and lowered self-esteem, and I can smell the fear that they live with daily. I know the frustration of trying to help them, to get them to seek help, to get them to open their eyes. I called a counseling group once anonymously, and they told me, "I don't know why you worry about it. It's between your sister and her husband. It's not your business. But I am afraid she will get seriously hurt. Wait until there's a body." The police told me when I called them that they would not interfere unless my sister wanted to call them and press charges. Oh, yes, I know only too well how helpless the police felt and how frustrated it is to deal with an abused woman too ignorant to seek help for herself and her children. However, Monday night, actually, Tuesday morning at 3 a.m., when I went to bed, I dreamt again. This time she was shaking her head and pleading, please, please, H-E-L-P. She was crying and wringing her hands. I awoke again as before and left my sleeping husband. There is no reason to bother him with my nonsense. I walked through the house. I couldn't help. I didn't know her. And as I laid on the couch to sleep, tried to, as I drifted off, only tormented sleep would come. The woman felt lost. Tuesday afternoon at work, I browsed through a newspaper looking for a puzzle to do, something that I like to do while the dough rises. On page 5A, a small picture leapt out at me, a woman with light hair, her face all too familiar. I turned on the TV. Thank God there's one there. The full color photograph gave me the chills. She was the woman in my dreams. I turned to the paper and I was terrified to read that she was O.J. Simpson's wife. I never knew his wife was blonde, nor that she was white. Up until now, could my dreams be real? I begged God, don't do this to me, please. Why me? There was a dominant emotion of which I became aware. Nicole didn't ask who, only why. Nicole knew the killer. What she didn't know, was puzzled by, confused about, was why. From that day on, sleep became less and less. I dreaded it, knowing that it would only bring pieces of a puzzle to which, even if I could solve it, I would be unable to prove it, and no one in his right mind would believe me. I became afraid to sleep. The dreams too daunting. I was drawn into something I did not want to be involved in. I would awake my husband with my sobbing, and he would awaken me and try to comfort me. The sense of helplessness and doom grew greater and greater. No one would believe me. No one would believe a dream. Excuse me. I couldn't prove anything. I hadn't enough information. All I knew was that Redacted was the killer. Recognizing Nicole on Tuesday and knowing that I would not get any decent sleep, I salvaged all old papers and cut out any article that would help me with the clues. I wrote on the papers the first idea that came to mind as I read each statement by statement. I challenged people with my theory. Prove me wrong, please. Everyone only said that if I was right, it would come out in the trial, that I would just have to wait and see. The only thing is that it could take a year or so. I didn't have a year. I couldn't go through a whole year of these dreams. As early as Thursday, I had uncovered the events. I waited each night. More pieces fell into place. The 911 tapes confirmed one dream. If it had been O.J., Nicole would not have opened the door. She would not have done what she had done in the past. She would call 911. I knew she would. She had done it before. The hardest part about the wife abuse crime is to get the woman to make that first call. They let her know it's a lifeline. The next hardest is getting them to leave the man. Nicole had already proved she was strong enough to call 911, and she was out of the man's house. She was on the road to recovery. She had regained control of her life, yet she still lived in fear. She would not leave her door unlocked. She would not open the door without looking out first. The person on the other side of the door was someone she recognized, someone she opened the door to willingly. Why? Because she was expecting someone from the Mezzaluna to bring the glasses to her house. She did not know who or when. She opened the door willingly, expecting to receive the glasses. Instead, she was killed. The murderer moved her body out, away from the entry lights. He did not want to alert Goldman. He then stepped inside to check for any persons, adults, guests, and when he returned outside, Goldman was perched over Nicole's body. He walked up behind him and stabbed him. Goldman tried to fight. Removing the hat and recognizing the killer, he too died. The killer did or tried to remove part of Goldman's ear, the ear with the earring. Unsure. The killer could not retrieve what he had lost in battle, for at that moment O.J.'s car appeared. I am unsure if it was O.J. driving or someone else. The driver did what any normal person would do. He ran to Nicole and he checked for a pulse, and then he ran into the house to check the kids. He found them asleep. Okay, then he grabbed some towels and tried to wipe up the blood. I think that he might have moved the bodies, hoping that someone would see them and report it before the children awoke. He could not wake the children. He could not call the police. He was trying to avoid exactly what has happened. The killer knew that O.J. would be implicated. The killer knew that Nicole was expecting someone from the Mezzaluna restaurant. The killer knew that she would open the door to him willingly. If the killer had been O.J., Nicole would have called 911 instinctively, as she had so often in the past when O.J. broke in. Also, O.J. is a yeller. I cannot believe that he would not have confronted Nicole and not yelled loud enough to wake all the neighbors. The killer knew he had gotten there before Goldman. In a paper here, Goldman's father stated with conviction and echoed by co-workers, he has not now, nor has he ever been involved romantically with a woman. This led me to believe that he may be gay, that the killer was Goldman's jealous lover. A co-worker of Goldman stated he was trying to find himself. Knew how much time that he had, knew he could not kill both together, knew he would have to take them on one at a time. Apparently, he did not know that O.J. had kicked in the door before there was no sign of forced entry, an unknown slip. He knew how much time he had before Goldman would appear, and he knew, for he was the one who set up Goldman. The killer was redacted. That was when things began to fall into place. While working, while sleeping, any other murderer would not know that Goldman was coming. Any other murderer would have killed Nicole and left. It was reported on a special report June 26 that Goldman was wearing blue jeans. I was right. I have been right since Tuesday. The killer was redacted. Redacted stated in the Tuesday paper that he knew that Nicole called about her glasses and that Goldman volunteered to take them to her. Her house was only 2 blocks away. I don't know where Goldman lived, but if he had taken the glasses to Nicole first, he would still be wearing his waiter outfit. Redacted stated in the paper, I sent my copy to Mr. Shapiro. I can't quote exactly. They were just good friends. They were friends with a lot of people. They would go here and there, and then they would meet for coffee and meet with a bunch of other people. Redacted keeps saying they. I know this hit me as strange. I know my coworkers. I rarely know their husbands or their friends or who they hang out with or where they go and what they do away from work. A report stated that Nicole felt O.J. was following her. Did she only feel this way when she was with Goldman? Perhaps it seems that Redacted was following them, not her. Also, Redacted stated the plan was that I was finishing up soon and I was going to go home and call him, and then we would meet at a bar. Stating earlier that Goldman volunteered to drop off the glasses to Nicole. This was Redacted's alibi. I wondered why he wasn't questioned before. Why didn't they just agree upon which bar to meet at before leaving the Mezzaluna? The real plan was to delay Goldman. The real plan was that Goldman would go home and change his clothes and then drop off Nicole's glasses. In this way, the killer knew how long it would take Goldman to do this. I believe that this happened because the glasses were found in an envelope outside of the house near the body of Goldman. If Goldman had gotten to the house first, he left the restaurant at 9:45, the glasses would have been inside the house. Nicole would have been suspicious of another person from the Mezzaluna showing up if Goldman had already been there. Only a friend of Goldman's would know the timing. Only a dominating partner could talk Goldman into going home to change his clothes first. Only Redacted knew. Now, I believe that I had enough information. A motive, a jealous lover, a weapon, a knife from the Mezzaluna. Here there are fancy restaurants. They cut their own meat. If the Mezzaluna was a fancy restaurant, the knife would be there. The killer would know that it was indeed sharp enough to cut meat. There would also be gloves there for handling the meat and for keeping it from becoming contaminated. There would be a large walk-in cooler. In a restaurant I worked in, there were beanies kept on hand for anyone to wear, and gloves too, for the people who may have been in the cooler or freezer for an extended period of time. They were universal. That is, shared by all. The timing. I believe, sickeningly, that the knife is back at the Mezzaluna restaurant. If it is anything like where my husband and I work, knives end up missing all the time. My husband and I work 6 nights a week, and have not had a vacation in years. When an item is missing, we look everywhere, and then we laugh and joke that it took a vacation. Once a waitress went to Las Vegas, and I swear she rode the broom there. It was missing for a week, and showed up again only upon her return to work. If they have a lot of knives, they might not even miss one, might not even notice. Mr. Night Supervisor, please tell me I'm wrong, for the dreams I have now no longer include Nicole. They only contain a silhouette of a man, laughing hideously, a knife in his hand. I believe that Goldman may have been gay, may have been questioning his gay conviction. The ear of Goldman was cut off in an attempt to deface his gayism in death. I don't have all the facts. I don't really want any more. All I want is sleep. Restful, peaceful, not haunted sleep. Mr. Night Supervisor, I cannot tell you how much this has cost me. In phone calls, trying to get someone to help me, trying to get someone to listen. Yes, I believe O.J. is guilty of wife abuse. He has not abused her in 5 years, and in fact his attentions were, at least in part, turned to another woman. Please tell me that I do not have to live in fear forever. Fear that my twin, so recently freed from her batterer, will be killed by him. Please tell me that none of my other sisters will die. Please tell me that once the battered woman leaves, the cycle of abuse will stop. Please, please, please tell me that this is correct. You can tell me that my dreams on the killer are wrong. You can tell me I am wrong. Please tell me that the police department in Los Angeles is not biasedly trying to find enough circumstantial evidence to convict the wrong man of murder. In O.J.'s place, with the media against him, did we really expect him to do anything other than run? Wouldn't you, if you were innocent? June 29, 1994, 5:41 a.m. Mr. Night Supervisor, I am mailing this to you today, all of it. Thank you sincerely for listening to me. I have never done anything like this before. I hope sincerely that I never have to again. I will wait for a negative call again. Thank you for listening. Thank you sincerely. Why me? I am the most unlikely person to help a man out. I have not ever been a football fan. I have always been pro-woman, to the extent of being anti-man, almost. I hate wife beaters, even those who try to justify what they do. I have a brother-in-law who says that God intended for women to be beaten by their husbands. My husband, my co-workers who know me well, are my closest, and my closest uncle are miffed by my fascination with the O.J. case. If my parents find out that when they find out that I have helped out, I am sure that they will demand to have my head examined. Until I had a talk with you, I was inclined to agree. If Nicole had to pick someone to help her, why wouldn't she have picked someone who at least knew who she was? After I talked to you last night, I went to sleep. I dreamt of the knife and awoke. I don't need to know. There are some things that other people are paid to find out. What I needed desperately for the last 2 weeks was someone to listen. What I now need is sleep. I await your call. Thank you. I don't watch horror shows. Any night without warning, I can see horror enough to really upset me. It's free, and I don't like it. I do have more documentation to show my mental processes of the last few weeks. These feelings I have happen when I am whether I am sleeping or awake. Can you tell me why? Sure, think I'm paranoid. I don't. Past experience has taught me to listen to the little voice whenever it talks. Writing this was painful. I cried. It brought up old memories and renewed fear. Marigold. Hi, Taco. Hi, Justina. Hi, everybody. That's weird, right? Type letter to the FBI night supervisor, 7/1/94. July 1/94. Mr. FBI night supervisor, what did I say to make you listen to me? I was afraid to tell you all of my feelings, lack of a better word. I was afraid that one wrong word, one wrong fact would make me seem a fake, a Fruit Loop. There are so many questions. Why me? Why? Why had Goldman never contacted me? Could it be because he knew why he was killed? I felt that his earring and that portion of his ear was missing because he was gay. He was questioning his conviction to gayism. That was why maybe that he was spending more time with Nicole. Or was he seeking consolation from another battered person, seeking help in dealing with a dominating, controlling, insanely jealous lover? I feel that the killer took back the earring, cut off the ear to deface his lover, deface him for questioning his gayism, for turning to Nicole for support, for spending more and more time with Nicole. On Tuesday, I felt at first a feeling of hope, that OJ was lucky because he wasn't at home that night. I felt that had he been home, he too would have died at the hands of the murderer, and now I wonder, how wrong was I? Is he really so lucky to be alive now, charged with 2 murders and possibly facing the death penalty? I sense no fear in Nicole about her children, no wonderment about what would happen to them. Is this because she knew that OJ was still alive to care for them? Would not this give her a little apprehension and fear of their safety, knowing that he abused her? Wouldn't she have conveyed this fear to me if OJ had been the murderer? I felt that the murderer had gone to OJ's estate, not knowing that he was on his way to the airport to also kill OJ. Enraged that OJ didn't reconcile with Nicole and thus restore the killer's romance by removing Nicole from his lover. June 30th, 2 a.m. When I went to bed, I got sleep. Restful, unhaunted, no dreaming sleep. I awoke at 7 a.m. and I went outside with the house garbage. I let out the chickens and the ducks, convinced that my life was once again returning to normal. I picked strawberries, hoping to catch up on much of my neglected chores over the past few weeks since the killings. Lack of sleep, lack of fitful sleep, and fear of dreams, of getting anyone to listen to me, let alone believe me, had left me exhausted, too tired to do daily chores, too afraid to be outside alone, afraid to be out of arm's reach of my comforting, consoling husband. I was squatted down, picking berries, when I felt a presence. I froze and slowly looked around. Should the neighbors be watching me? I didn't want them to think I was crazy. No one. I chided myself for being paranoid, and then told myself it was nothing. As I chided myself for being paranoid, as I reached out to pick another berry, something, a whisper, so close to my ear I could feel the pulse of the words, not the terrifying whisper of a killer. This time it was a consoling whisper, like that of an angel. It was a high-pitched and fast, way, way too fast to comprehend. The pitch was not deafening, more like a tape on fast-forward, but soft, so as not to scare me. I reached up to my ear, no bug. It wasn't like that of a buzzing bug, a mosquito or fly, that is a certainty. I reeled around this time, not caring about the neighbors, my eyes seeking something, anything to explain this away, anything to comfort me with the fact that this was not another strange thing. There was nothing, no one, not near or far. I picked up the berries and ran into the house, scared. I wanted to seek the comfort of my husband, have him tell me that it was okay. But do I tell my husband? Would this be enough to make him decide to leave me? Would this be the straw that broke his loving back? Would he believe me? Would it scare him? Mr. Knight, supervisor, I'm afraid I'm right and no one will listen. At least I am counting on you. Fearful that I am wrong and will be committed to an asylum, and terrified of what the future holds. I've had a lot of dreams before when asleep, and a feeling of deadly premonition and gloom when awake, but nothing like this. The people were either family that I knew well or complete strangers, people I had never known before and never recognized. People die every day. People are tortured and murdered everywhere throughout the world. If I don't know who they are, I can't help them. And even when I know who they are, how do I convey that I know they're in danger? How do I tell them that I knew? The answer, I don't. Hold on a minute. Oh, that's the way it is. The answer, I don't. If I know them, I call them ASAP to check on them with the saying, I was just thinking of you. How are you doing? No one questions it. This is the first time that I have had any dreams dealing with a stranger that I recognized immediately from the photo in the paper, as I told you before. I don't want to be famous for this. I only want to live my life with peace, with my adoring husband. I don't want to be plagued with dreams, strangers that I don't know seeking my help, demanding it. I don't want the publicity. I value my privacy. I am a loner. Meaning, I do not even visit my family as often as I would like to. I found out in 1986 when I moved to a different town to start a new job that the less I am around my family, the fewer dreams I have about them. Selfish? Maybe. But they are all adults. Isn't it about time that they really start to rely on their own common sense to protect themselves and their own children? I cannot summon a dream. I have no control over the premonitions. I wish only that I could, at least to end my torment. At one time, I prayed that I would not dream of the knife. Now I wish that I could, so that I could tell you where it was, and thus end my torment. I feel that it is in a rain gutter or something similar. I don't know why. The more I probe my feelings, the more questions it raises, and the less certain I am that I want to proceed. Do I really want to know the answers? I'm not sure that I do. The dreams are so haunting. I wake up wiping non-existent blood off my hands, my body drenched in sweat, my breathing labored. Whenever it was no one I knew, I just assumed that it was childish nightmares that I never outgrew. Could it be that all those dreams were people who had died senselessly and were seeking answers themselves? I was so afraid to call you, especially since the killer was now after me. and I am placing too much faith in the system. Will the true killer be found before he finds out about me, or will someone I love dearly suffer yet again because of me? My mother told me once, you will always be one step in front of the devil, just one step, one slip by you, and he will have you. She wasn't very happy with me. I had awoke one night, standing at the bed in my parents' room. I was on the side where my dad usually slept. However, the man in the bed was not my dad. When my dad returned, I think he was on a business trip, I casually mentioned it at the breakfast table. From that moment on, my mother wasn't real pleased with me, and I guess I can't blame her. But then again, what did I know? I was only around 4 years old. I didn't think it was wrong. I didn't know. I thought that's what all moms did. Guess I found out otherwise. Bodies bathed in blood, fear, all-consuming fear. Sweaty sheets and screaming in my sleep. With my life always be this? Friday, July 8th. My husband and I returned from work. It was storming out. That Saturday and watched it for a while, and then my husband went upstairs. I sat in the living room with the TV on, peeking out the picture window, watching the lightning light up the dark. 2 a.m. I was thinking of how peaceful it was, and I settled back in the chair. Just then the electricity went off. Lightning lit the outdoors. I turned my head towards the window, and I saw the figure of a person illuminated through the curtain. I whipped the curtain open. There was no one there. Saturday, July 9th. I had spent all day cleaning and catching up on housework. My husband and his brother came in for dinner. While we were eating, I tried to get them to listen to me, to have a three-way discussion on the O.J. Simpson case. They weren't interested. The subject was changed, and I said that it was all up to the lawyers now, and I thought that was that. I was reaching to pick up my fork when I felt a small pinch. I looked at my hand. Nothing. So I reached again. This time the pinch was harder. I turned my head over to look and discovered a large blood blister forming at the base of my thumb on my hand. I showed it to my brother-in-law and said, "What? You didn't even hit it on anything." We sat there thinking about how odd it was, and then I looked at my husband and said the killer was left-handed. This case is far from over for me. P.S. If they come to take me to the funny farm, can my husband come too? July 14th, 1994. While at work, paying attention to my work, I felt a sharp, stabbing pain in my left back, clear through to my stomach. I pulled up my shirt and I looked, but I saw nothing, so I continued to work. The pains continued in the back to the front stomach. In the left leg, I could feel blood running down it, and then my knee felt like it was bruised. I felt my leg and was surprised gladly that there was no real blood. Then I felt 2 light strokes across my throat. Now I'm terrified. These are indicative of the wounds on Goldman. I told my husband, just in case I passed out from the pain of the next 3 wounds, the chest and neck wounds. But after talking to my husband, the pains ended. Said it was because I was too absorbed by the case. I don't think so. The sounds happened in an entirely different order than what I had thought. The wounds happened in an entirely different order than what I had thought. July 15th, 1994, while working at the bakery and trying to keep my mind off the O.J. case, a scene came into view. The knife used by the killer was broken when Goldman shoved the knife into the stabber's forearm and into the rocks bricks. The tip was broken off. It ties into the dream that I had where I saw the knife early in the house. However, I dismissed this as not being the knife involved in the killing because there was no tip. Where there was to be a tip, it was flat. One knife, one killer. Review: the killer retrieves the knife The use of his left hand is diminished, makes sloppy attempts to wound Goldman, shallow cuts. Then he switches the knife to his other hand. Couldn't this make it look more like more than one knife was used and more than one attacker? Yes, yes, yes. I'm afraid. I have tried and tried to get someone to listen to me, someone to help me, someone to make sense of this. I talked to my parents about something else, and I mentioned the OJ case, and Mom and Dad didn't seem surprised. I didn't know who to talk to, and I didn't know where to go. This to OJ with a postcard for them to return, and I called the West LA FBI again. They said that they are no longer handling the case, that they are turning everything over to the LA Police Department. Yeah, that police department is just barely one step above the little rascals. It's a misspent crusade of injustice, more like a where do I go from here? Help. Okay, so that's crazy stuff, huh? Hold on, let me get my glasses. Oh my gosh, I've been wearing glasses with a tag on them. Oh my gosh. So that's crazy stuff, isn't it? Hi, Nan Sullivan. How are you? This cannot be taken seriously. Are they just showing how many dumb letters they got? They're showing 475 pages of investigation documents. And that's what we're going through. So we're going through it all. Testimony in the preliminary hearing. Where are you employed? Redacted. How long? Redacted. What do you do there? Redacted. I'm showing you 2 pictures and I want you to identify these people. Do you recognize the person in the first photo? Pause. Yes. We were co-workers. Do you recognize the person in the second photo? She was a customer there. Then he told about how Redacted, Goldman were going to go to Redacted. Yes, he talked to Goldman before he left the restaurant. I was tired when I got home. You talked to Goldman before he left that night? Yes. What did he say? He said, I'll talk to you later. What was Goldman wearing when he left the restaurant? He had on black slacks and a white shirt. Did you see which way he went when he left the restaurant? No. I know that he lived within walking distance, and I knew the direction, but not the address. He said he didn't recall telling police that Goldman was taking glasses to Nicole. He insisted that he was not aware that Goldman had the envelope with the sunglasses in it. Shapiro showed Redacted the police report of the conversation the police wrote down that morning when they interviewed Redacted. Redacted got extremely hostile. Throughout the entire testimony and questioning, he was hostile, even towards Marcia Clark. I found this odd. Shapiro, is this the statement that you gave the police? No. Someone else may have said this. I didn't. Were you alone when interviewed you? No. There were others around. Everyone was talking. Did the police write down your statement? I don't know. Well, did they have a pen and paper? Yes. Did they take down your statement? I don't know. Were they writing while you were talking? They were writing. Yes. But I don't know what they were writing and or if it was what I was saying. He says he didn't tell police that he knew Goldman was taking glasses to Nicole. It was not mentioned. He didn't remember. I can't remember what I said. You have to remember 2 friends died that day. Everything else is a fog. I saw him as he was leaving. He had taken off his coat and tie. He said, I'll see you later. He was still in black dress slacks and a white shirt of the uniform of the Mezzaluna. No, I don't recall which door he left by. Manager said he left by the door at the bar and talked with Redacted first before leaving. Is Nicole on the way to the Baja Marina? Yes. He said no one had talked to him about the day except for the police. What about the quotes in the paper? Don't they need to get your permission before printing your name? He seemed very agitated. He would get home and call me. He never called me. I decided to go to bed because I was tired. Questions. If Nicole and Goldman were two of his friends, why did it take him so long to recognize them from the photos? And then later he says, you have to remember, 2 friends died that day. Everything else is foggy. He said he didn't know Goldman was going to Nicole's. Yet later he said that Goldman would call him when he got home. If Goldman got off first and was going straight home, he would be home before Redacted got off first, correct? So if he called Redacted when he got home, literally, Redacted would still be at work, correct? Redacted had to know that Goldman was going somewhere, or he would not have had Goldman call him when Goldman, goes home. He said he didn't know Goldman was going to Nicole's. The manager stated she looked for glasses, found them, put them in an envelope marked Nicole Simpson, sunglasses, and put them behind the bar. I can't believe that he didn't see this or was not aware of it. I used to be a bartender in a restaurant too. When someone lost something, everyone working was asked to see if something had been turned in. I can't believe that Redacted was not aware of the missing sunglasses or the phone calls. Also, when items were found in the bar where I worked, they were placed next to the cash register since this was the only safe place, a place where they would not be in the way, would not get damaged, would not become misplaced among the bar bottles and glasses. This was just too far-fetched. The manager said that Goldman asked for the glasses and told her that he would take them to Nicole. I also can't believe that Redacted was not aware of this also. What kind of bartender is he that he is not aware of what happens near his till? Isn't he responsible for the money in it? I was when I Redacted. I always kept one eye on the till. He said that Goldman talked to him and then left. No, he didn't know by which door. The manager said he left by the bar door after talking to Redacted. How could Redacted not see what door Goldman left by? He said Goldman left in a white shirt and black slacks. He had a jacket over his arm and a tie removed. I believe that he may not have had actually seen the envelope at this time. It could have been in the jacket pocket. Goldman changed clothes before he was killed. Shapiro showed Redacted a copy of the police report. After he was questioned and cross-examined, I believe that Redacted got so agitated because what he just testified to in court under oath was not the same that was recorded on the police report. At this point, he was very hostile, and his hand shook. Could it be that he blew his alibi? Redacted said he was finishing up soon. Then he said he got home at 11:30. Wouldn't soon be closer to 5, 10, 15 minutes and not 1.5 hours? Am I the only one who noticed these discrepancies? Why not question him further? He had plans to go to Redacted. Goldman. Why didn't he call Goldman to tell them he didn't want to go because he was tired? He said that he got tired of waiting for Goldman to call, so he just went to bed. If Goldman was his friend, was it unusual for him not to call as agreed, or was it because that Redacted didn't try to call him nor worry about him because he knew that Goldman was dead already? He said he got home at 11:30. What time did he leave the restaurant? No one questioned the manager about this? Check the time card. Ask the manager discreetly if she remembers him leaving. Also, is it usual for a Redacted to close one night and then to be at the restaurant again the next morning? How did Redacted happen to be at the restaurant for questioning? Did anyone think to question his appearance? To look for bodily signs of a struggle? Did Redacted and Goldman hang out together often? Also, if Nicole and Goldman were two friends of his, why did he know everywhere that they went together in paper, but he kept saying they and not we? He did not hang out with them. Don't you think that this is rather strange testimony? Please obtain a copy of the records if you can, and check it out. I am afraid that soon all evidence will be gone. Did OJ set his alarm before he took his nap? Did anyone check his alarm clock? Was it a snooze clock? How far does Goldman live from the Mezzaluna? Since the dog was heard wailing at 10:15, would it be reasonable to assume that Nicole and Goldman were already dead at this time? The neighbor did mention looking out then, but did not see a vehicle. Okay, I'm going to end that there for tonight, but we'll continue with this tomorrow. Hope that you guys are good with going through this, and that you can write any questions you have in the chat or whatever. Thank you guys. God bless and prayers. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm just exhausted and I've got to get some rest. Good night now. Thank you for watching.